The next morning felt unreal. I woke up in my hotel room staring at the ceiling for a full minute, trying to figure out if the entire wedding had been some elaborate emotional hallucination. Then my phone buzzed, and there was a text from Ronan. Ronan, you alive? Or did I permanently short-circuit you? I smiled so hard it physically hurt, which was embarrassing considering it was 8 o'clock in the morning. Me, still recovering emotionally. 3 dots appeared immediately. Ronan, good, means I made an impression. I laughed quietly into my pillow. God, even texting him felt dangerous. Because now every interaction carried this warm undercurrent underneath it. Every word felt loaded after last night. I rolled onto my side, staring at the screen. Me, you definitely did. A few seconds passed before another message came through. Ronan, come get breakfast with me before you head home. My stomach flipped instantly. It shouldn't have. This was literally just breakfast. But somehow the idea of seeing him again in daylight after everything that happened last night made me nervous all over again. Like maybe reality would finally kick in and ruin it. Still, 20 minutes later, I was standing outside the hotel lobby trying very hard to act normal. Didn't work. Especially when Ronan walked in wearing a black t-shirt and jeans instead of wedding clothes. Honestly, that somehow made him even hotter, which felt unfair. His hair was still slightly messy, like he just showered quickly, light stubble along his jaw. Sunglasses tucked into the collar of his shirt. And the second he saw me, his entire face changed. Like he was genuinely happy I was there. That did something violent to my nervous system immediately. Hey, he said. The warmth in his voice made my stomach tighten all over again. Hey. For half a second, we just stood there smiling at each other like idiots. Then Ronan stepped closer, close enough that his hand brushed lightly against my waist before he leaned down and kissed my cheek casually, like he'd been doing it forever. Meanwhile, my brain completely overheated. You look overwhelmed already, he murmured. You're very hard to be normal around. That's mutual. He smiled when he said it too, like he enjoyed knowing he affected me this much, which honestly, he absolutely should not have enjoyed. We ended up at a small cafe near the vineyard, the kind with outdoor seating and overpriced coffee and couples sitting too close together. Naturally, Ronan picked the table where our knees touched immediately. I noticed. He definitely noticed me noticing too. You sleep okay? He asked. I stirred my coffee mostly because I needed something to do with my hands. Honestly, not really. Same. I looked up carefully, and the expression on his face made my chest tighten again, because he looked at me like last night still mattered this morning. Like it wasn't just wedding chaos and alcohol and nostalgia. It was real to him too. Ronan leaned back slightly in his chair. I kept replaying that first kiss in my head. Well, that sentence nearly killed me instantly. Oh, he smiled faintly at my reaction. You're blushing again. I need you to stop noticing things. Impossible. God. The waitress came by before I could recover. And honestly, thank God, because I needed 10 business days to process this conversation already. But even while ordering food, Ronan kept looking at me. Not subtly either, like he genuinely couldn't stop. Finally, I laughed nervously. What? You're prettier than I remembered. I nearly dropped my coffee. That's a crazy thing to say at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's true. Ronan. What? You can't just look at me like that and say things casually. He leaned forward slightly. But I wanted to say them for years. And there it was again, that ache right in the center of my chest. Because every time he admitted how long he'd carried this too, it made everything feel even more real. I still can't believe this is happening, I admitted quietly. Ronan's expression softened immediately. Me neither. The honesty in his voice grounded me a little, because he wasn't acting cool or detached about this either. If anything, he looked just as affected as I felt. Then his foot nudged mine lightly under the table. Tiny touch, completely devastating. "You know what I realized last night?" he asked. "What?" "I never actually stopped looking for you." My breath caught instantly. "What do you mean?" Ronan shrugged once, almost embarrassed suddenly. "Mutual friends, social media, random stuff." He looked down briefly before meeting my eyes again. "Every once in a while, I'd wonder what happened to you." I stared at him quietly, because somehow hearing that mattered almost more than anything else. The idea that I stayed in his mind, too, all this time. I laughed softly under my breath. "That's kind of insane." "Probably, and a little romantic." That made him grin immediately. "There he is." "What?" "The version of you that flirts back instead of panicking." Heat rushed into my face again. "I hate that you can tell the difference." "I love that I can tell the difference." The waitress dropped off our food then, but honestly, I barely registered it, because Ronan reached over casually and brushed his thumb lightly against my wrist while handing me my coffee. And the look he gave me afterward, yeah, I was absolutely doomed. Breakfast somehow lasted almost 3 hours. Neither of us seemed interested in leaving. We kept drifting from one conversation to another so naturally that it honestly felt weird realizing we'd missed nearly 8 years of this. Ronan told me about moving back closer to home after grad school, about his job designing commercial spaces, about how he adopted a dog during a quarter-life crisis and accidentally became obsessed with him. "You have a dog?" I asked immediately. Ronan pulled out his phone without hesitation. "Oh, you're done for." The picture he showed me nearly took me out emotionally. A huge golden retriever laying across Ronan's lap, looking deeply unbothered by life. "His name's Callum," Ronan said proudly. "That is the most aggressively trustworthy dog I've ever seen. He weighs 90 pounds and thinks he's a baby." I laughed while Ronan swiped through more pictures. And honestly, watching him smile while talking about something he loved felt almost more dangerous than the flirting, because suddenly I wasn't just attracted to him, I liked him, which somehow felt scarier. "You're smiling," Ronan said suddenly. I blinked. "What?" "You get this specific smile when you forget to be nervous." My entire body heated instantly. "Can you stop psychoanalyzing me?" "No. You're impossible. You like it." "Unfortunately, very much." Eventually, we finally left the cafe and walked slowly back toward the hotel parking lot together. Neither of us mentioned the fact we were walking unnecessarily slow, like stretching the morning out as long as possible. The sun was brighter now, warming the sidewalks while wedding guests loaded suitcases into cars around us. And somehow, being with Ronan in normal daylight made everything feel even more intimate, more real. Because there was no dreamy nighttime atmosphere anymore. No wedding magic. Just him, still looking at me like that. "So," Ronan said as we reached the parking lot, "important question." I glanced over. "Okay, how far are you from the city?" "Like 40 minutes. He nodded once thoughtfully. "Good." I laughed softly. "Good? That's date distance." The butterflies in my stomach became immediately unbearable. "You're very confident we're doing this." Ronan looked genuinely confused. "Pierce." "What?" "You kissed me goodbye in a parking lot like 30 minutes ago." "Fair point." I looked down, smiling helplessly, while he laughed quietly beside me. Then, after a second, his tone softened again. "You know I'm serious, though, right?" I looked back up carefully. "About what?" "About wanting this." The honesty in his voice hit hard enough that my chest tightened immediately. Because there it was again. No games. No weird ambiguity. Just Ronan standing there openly wanting me. "I know," I admitted softly. His expression relaxed slightly, like he'd been waiting for that answer. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced down and groaned. "What?" "My cousin wants help cleaning up the venue." I smiled immediately. "That sounds like karma. You're enjoying this too much." "Little bit." Ronan shook his head laughing before stepping closer again. Close enough now that I could smell his cologne mixed with coffee. And suddenly, my brain became very aware we were standing alone, rows of cars, with nobody really paying attention to us. Dangerous. You know what I keep thinking about? He asked quietly. My pulse jumped. What? The fact I finally get to flirt with you openly. I laughed nervously. You were flirting with me in high school? Pierce, I practically followed you around. You terrorized me emotionally. I bought tickets to school plays I did not understand because you were in them. I stared at him. You did? Yes. Oh my God. I sat through 3 hours of experimental theater for you. I laughed so hard I nearly doubled over. That's actually romantic. It was suffering. You liked me that much? Ronan's smile faded slightly into something softer. Yeah, he said quietly. I really did. The way he looked at me afterward made my chest ache again, because suddenly I could picture it. Teenage Ronan watching me from the audience while I completely missed it. Years of crossed wires, years of almost. It honestly felt a little heartbreaking, but also weirdly healing, because now we were here, finally talking about all the things we never got to say. You know what's embarrassing? I admitted. What? I used to rehearse conversations with you before parties. Ronan looked delighted immediately. No. Yes. What kind of conversations? Fake normal ones where I wasn't having a crisis every time you stood near me. He laughed loud enough that a nearby couple glanced over. I cannot believe this. It gets worse. Oh. I definitely need worse. I covered my face briefly. One time I changed outfits 3 times because I heard you might be somewhere. Ronan looked genuinely affected by that. Not teasing this time. Almost overwhelmed. Pierce. What? You have no idea what hearing that does to me. That warmth spread through my chest again. And suddenly neither of us were joking anymore. Ronan stepped closer, slowly. Close enough that my back lightly touched my car door. You know what I wanted back then? He asked softly. I swallowed hard immediately. What? To get one real chance with you. The tension between us snapped tight all over again, especially because of the way he was looking at me now. Warm, intent, almost unbearably affectionate. And now? I asked quietly. Ronan's eyes dropped briefly to my mouth before lifting again. Now I'm trying very hard not to kiss you in this parking lot. My heart slammed against my ribs. Trying? Not successfully. And then he kissed me anyway. Kissing Ronan in broad daylight felt completely different. At the wedding, everything had been soft and dreamy and wrapped in string lights and champagne haze. This felt dangerously real. Because now I could actually see him clearly. The way his eyes closed the second I kissed him back. The way his hand slid against my waist instinctively, like he already knew where he wanted me. The slight breath he let out against my mouth that nearly destroyed me on impact. And honestly, the fact we were standing in a hotel parking lot in full daylight somehow made it hotter, more reckless. Ronan kissed me slower this time, but deeper too, less tentative, like we'd already crossed some invisible line. I grabbed lightly at the front of his shirt before I could stop myself, and the quiet sound he made against my mouth sent heat straight through my body. When we finally pulled apart, I realized my back was fully pressed against the car now. Ronan looked equally affected, hair messier, breathing uneven, eyes still fixed on my mouth like he was debating doing it again immediately. Okay, I said breathlessly, that one was your fault. He laughed softly, still too close. My fault? You started it. You kissed me back aggressively. I did not aggressively kiss you. His hand tightened lightly at my waist. Pierce. The way he said my name made my stomach flip instantly. What? You absolutely did. I laughed despite myself while he smiled down at me. And suddenly it hit me again how surreal this entire thing was. Because Ronan wasn't just flirting anymore. He was affectionate, openly. Like he genuinely couldn't stop touching me. Not that I wanted him to. Honestly, I was becoming alarmingly attached to his hands very quickly. A car door slammed somewhere nearby, breaking the moment enough for both of us to glance away briefly, reality creeping back in, unfortunately. Ronan sighed softly. I actually do have to help clean up. Tragic. You going to survive without me? I pretended to think about it. Unclear. That smile appeared again immediately. God, I was starting to understand why everyone used to fall for him so easily. Because when Ronan looked at you like that, you felt chosen. And apparently, I'd wanted that feeling from him since I was 16. Dangerous realization. He brushed his thumb lightly against my side again before speaking. Can I see you this week? The directness of it still caught me off guard every time. Like he had no interest in pretending this was casual. Yeah, I answered immediately. Too immediately. Ronan definitely noticed too because his smile widened slightly. You didn't even pretend to think about it. I'm trying honesty now. How's that going? Poorly. You make me nervous. You keep saying that like it's a bad thing. It's terrible for my cardiovascular health. He laughed quietly again before finally stepping back slightly, which honestly felt rude after everything that just happened. You should drive safe, he said. That sounded weirdly parental. I care about you. The sentence landed so fast and so naturally that neither of us reacted immediately. But then I saw it happen. That tiny shift in his expression after he realized what he said. Not panic, just honesty catching up to him. And weirdly, it didn't scare me. It should have. This was moving fast. Too fast, probably. But standing there looking at Ronan while he stared at me like he already meant every word coming out of his mouth. I didn't want him to take it back. So instead, I smiled softly. You too. Something warm flashed across his face then. Relief, maybe. Affection, definitely. Then, before I could overthink it further, he leaned down and kissed my forehead quickly. Quickly, like that was a normal thing to do. Meanwhile, my soul practically left my body. Oh, you're evil, I muttered immediately. Ronan looked delighted. That got you? You kissed my forehead like we're in a romance movie. Felt right. That's insane behavior. You liked it. I hated how obvious the answer was. Ronan grinned like he already knew anyway. Then, reluctantly, finally, he stepped away completely. Text me when you get home. The softness in his voice nearly got me again. Yeah. Promise? I smiled helplessly. Promise. He nodded once like that genuinely mattered to him, which somehow made my chest tighten all over again. Then he walked backward a few steps, still looking at me. And because apparently this man enjoyed emotionally ruining me in new ways constantly, he pointed casually toward me and said, You know, you're still looking at me like I'm your dream guy. I laughed nervously. Maybe stop being exactly my type then. His expression shifted immediately, more intense, more focused. Like that answer affected him way more than I expected. Yeah? He asked quietly. Heat rushed straight through me, because suddenly this didn't feel teasing anymore. It felt intimate, honest. I held his gaze for a second before admitting softly, Ronan, you always were. Something emotional flickered across his face so fast it almost hurt to see. Then he smiled. Not playful, just real. And honestly, that expression stayed in my head the entire drive home. The entire drive home, I kept replaying tiny moments from the weekend, like my brain was determined to torture me emotionally. Ronan smiling at me across the breakfast table. Ronan kissing my forehead. Ronan saying I care about you like it slipped out before he could stop it. Every single memory made my stomach flip all over again. By the time I got home, I was completely useless. I dropped my bag by the door, kicked off my shoes, and immediately collapsed face first onto my couch. Then my phone buzzed. Ronan, did you survive the drive, or do I need to avenge you? I smiled helplessly into the cushion. Me, barely. Emotionally critical condition. The response came instantly. Ronan, yeah, same. God. Even his texts had chemistry somehow. I rolled onto my back, staring at the screen for a second before another message appeared. Ronan. Also, Callum already likes you. I blinked. Me. Your dog has never met me. Ronan. He trusts my judgment. That warmth spread through my chest again immediately. Dangerous. Very dangerous. The rest of the afternoon became a blur of unpacking and pretending I could focus on anything besides Ronan. Didn't work. At one point, I opened my fridge and genuinely forgot why. Then Wes called. The second I answered, he yelled, "You kissed him." I nearly dropped my phone. Oh my God, I knew it. Why are you screaming? Because I'm emotionally invested now. I laughed despite myself while sinking back onto the couch. You're insane. No, Wes corrected. You and Ronan are insane. Apparently this has been unresolved since the Obama administration. That feels aggressive. I cannot believe your first crush turned into this. Honestly, neither could I. Wes got quieter for a second before asking, "So, how are you feeling?" The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard a little. I stared up at the ceiling. Good, I admitted softly. Then after a pause, terrified, but good. Yeah, Wes said knowingly. That sounds about right. I smiled faintly because somehow that was exactly it. This whole thing felt exciting and overwhelming and slightly dangerous emotionally. Like I was standing too close to something that could absolutely wreck me if it went wrong. But for the first time in years, I wanted to risk it anyway. After hanging up with Wes, I took a shower, hoping it would help clear my head. It did not, because apparently my brain decided now was the perfect time to remember exactly how Ronan looked kissing me against my car earlier. The way his hand tightened at my waist, the sound he made when I grabbed his shirt, the forehead kiss. I leaned against the shower wall, groaning quietly to myself. This man was going to ruin me. By evening, Ronan and I had already exchanged enough text to make me realize something horrifying. We clicked way too naturally. There was no awkwardness, no weird pauses, just constant conversation. Memes, flirting, random questions. At one point, he sent me a blurry selfie with Callum laying across his chest. Ronan, he stole my spot. I stared at the picture for an embarrassing amount of time because Ronan looked soft, relaxed, happy, and somehow seeing him in normal everyday settings made him feel even more attractive than the wedding version, more real. Before I could stop myself, I typed, "Me, you look good like this." The second I hit send, panic arrived immediately. Too much, way too much. But then his typing bubble appeared, stopped, appeared again. Finally, Ronan, Pierce. My stomach flipped instantly. Me, what? 3 dots. Then, Ronan, you have no idea what that message just did to me. Heat rushed through me so fast I actually covered my face with one hand. This was ridiculous. I was 26 years old reacting to text like a teenager. But honestly, Ronan made me feel 16 again in the worst possible way. My phone buzzed again. Ronan, can I confess something embarrassing? I smiled already. Me, always. There was a pause before his next message appeared. Ronan, I've looked at your Instagram like 50 times today. I laughed out loud immediately. Me, that is deeply concerning behavior. Ronan, you posted a beach picture last summer and I've been unwell ever since. I nearly choked. Me, Ronan, I'm being vulnerable. Me, you're harassing me. Ronan, and yet you're smiling at your phone right now. The worst part? He was completely right. I flopped backward dramatically onto my bed while staring at our messages. Then another text came through. This one, softer, slower. Ronan, I really wish I could kiss you right now. My breath caught immediately. And suddenly the playful texting didn't feel playful anymore. It felt intimate again, charged. I stared at the message for a long second before finally replying honestly. Me, yeah, me too. 3 dots appeared instantly, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, Ronan, I think this might get serious really fast. My chest tightened hard at that, because deep down, I already knew it too. The problem with Ronan was that he somehow became part of my routine almost immediately. Within 3 days, texting him felt normal, dangerously normal. I'd wake up to messages from him, go to sleep after talking to him, and somehow, in between all of that, we still found more things to say. It honestly scared me a little how easy it was. Thursday night, I was halfway through making pasta when my phone buzzed. Ronan. Important question. I smiled automatically. Me. This already sounds suspicious. Ronan. Would you judge me if I said Callum has his own Halloween costumes? I laughed out loud immediately. Me. Extremely. A picture came through seconds later. Callum wearing a tiny shark costume. I physically had to lean against the counter from laughing. Me. That dog has no survival instincts. Ronan. He's beautiful and sensitive. Another message followed immediately. Ronan. Also, are you free tomorrow night? And there it was again. That immediate warmth in my chest every time he asked to see me. Me. Yeah. 3 dots appeared. Ronan. Good. I miss you. I froze completely. Just stood there in my kitchen, staring at the screen while my stomach flipped violently. Because somehow, that sentence felt bigger than all the flirting. More real. And the worst part? I missed him too. Which felt insane considering we'd only reconnected days ago. But it was true. I missed his voice, his hands, the way he looked at me like I was something precious. I typed back slowly. Me. You're making this very hard to play cool. His response came instantly. Ronan. Pierce, you lost cool the second you admitted you wrote poetry about me. I laughed helplessly. Then another text came through. Softer this time. Ronan. I really do miss you though. God. I leaned against the counter, smiling to myself like an idiot. And honestly, I didn't even care anymore. Friday night arrived way too slowly. I changed outfits 4 times, which immediately reminded me of high school and made me hate myself a little. But also, Ronan noticing me back then somehow made those old memories feel less embarrassing now. By the time he texted that he was outside my apartment, my heart was pounding so hard it genuinely annoyed me. I opened the building door and immediately forgot how to function. Because Ronan looked unfairly good. Dark jeans, black sweater, hair slightly messy from the wind. And then there was Callum beside him, happily wagging his tail like we were already best friends. Oh no, I said immediately. Ronan smirked. What? Your dog is adorable. This feels manipulative. Callum walked directly toward me like we'd known each other forever. Traitor. Ronan laughed softly while I down-petting him. He likes you. Well, yeah, I muttered. I'm charming. Little bit. That familiar warmth hit me all over again hearing him say it. Then I stood back up, and suddenly Ronan was very close. Close enough that I could smell his cologne again. Close enough that my body immediately remembered exactly what kissing him felt like. You look really good, he said quietly. The direct eye contact nearly took me out. You say things way too confidently. I'm trying honesty, he smiled faintly. Thought we agreed on that. Right. That. Unfortunately, honesty around Ronan mostly made me blush and lose vocabulary. Hi, I said intelligently. Ronan laughed under his breath. Hi. Callum barked once dramatically between us like he was tired of waiting. We both laughed immediately, the tension breaking just enough to breathe again. Come on, Ronan said. I made dinner reservations. You made reservations? I'm trying to impress you. You already kissed me in the parking lot. Expectations are high now. Ronan smiled slowly at that. Good. The restaurant was small and warm and dimly lit enough to feel intimate without being obnoxious about it. And somehow, dinner felt even more dangerous than the wedding. Because now, this was intentional. An actual date. No chaos around us, no accidental reunion excuse. Just us sitting across from each other, wanting this. On purpose. At one point, Ronan reached across the table absent-mindedly and brushed his thumb against my wrist while talking. Didn't even seem to realize he was doing it. Meanwhile, I nearly forgot my own name. You're staring again, he he said suddenly. I blinked. What? That look. What look? The one where you get quiet because you're thinking too much. I laughed softly. You really notice everything. Only with you. That sentence settled low in my chest immediately. The candlelight flickered softly between us while Ronan held my gaze a second too long afterward. And suddenly, the air felt heavier again, charged, dangerous. You know what I realized? He asked quietly. What? I like seeing you relaxed around me. That caught me off guard. Ronan smiled slightly. You were always so nervous in high school. His eyes moved slowly across my face. Now every once in a while I catch glimpses of the version of you that would have existed if you weren't scared all the time. That hit harder than he probably realized, because part of me still mourned that version too sometimes. The softer version, the less guarded version. Ronan's expression gentled immediately, like he could tell exactly what I was thinking. You deserved to feel safe back then, he said quietly. And honestly, that almost wrecked me right there in the restaurant. I didn't know what to do with how gentle Ronan could be. That was becoming the real problem. Because sure, the flirting destroyed my nervous system. The kissing definitely didn't help. But the softness? That was the thing getting under my skin permanently. The way he paid attention. The way he looked at me after saying something vulnerable, like he genuinely cared how it landed. The way he kept touching my wrist lightly across the table, like he wanted reassurance I was still there. It made this feel terrifyingly real. You okay? Ronan asked softly. I realized I'd gone quiet again. Yeah, I said honestly. Just thinking. Dangerous habit. I smiled faintly. You saying that every time I think it's starting to feel judgmental. I support your thoughts selectively. I laughed despite myself, and the relief on his face after making me smile hit me weirdly hard. Like he genuinely wanted me comfortable, wanted me happy. Ronan leaned back slightly in his chair, studying me for a second. You know what's weird? What? You're easier to read now. I raised an eyebrow. Am I? Yeah, he smiled softly. Back then, you hid everything. That was true. Teenage me operated entirely on repression and panic. Now? Apparently Ronan could tell every emotion I had just by looking at me too long, which honestly felt unfair. I still hide things, I admitted quietly. His expression softened immediately. I know. Not accusing, not disappointed, just understanding. And somehow that made me want to tell him everything. The waiter interrupted us briefly with dessert menus neither of us actually looked at, because the second we were alone again, Ronan's attention went right back to me. You know what I've been trying not to ask all night? He said. My stomach tightened instantly. What? How bad were the guys after me? I blinked. The guys after you? The ones you dated. I laughed softly in disbelief. That's your question? I'm curious. You're insane. Probably, he smiled slightly, but answer it anyway. I looked down at the table for a second before admitting they weren't bad. Ronan watched me carefully. But none of them were you. The honesty slipped out before I could stop it. And immediately, the entire mood shifted. Ronan went completely still across from me. The candlelight flickered against his face while he stared at me like I just said something dangerous. Pierce, he said quietly. I suddenly felt exposed, like I'd admitted too much. But then Ronan reached across the table slowly and took my hand, fully this time. Not subtle, not hidden, just warm fingers lacing carefully through mine. You really have no idea what you do to me, he murmured. That familiar ache spread through my chest all over again, because he kept looking at me like this mattered to him just as much, maybe more. Neither of us let go for the rest of dinner. And honestly, I didn't realize how much I needed that simple kind of affection until Ronan started giving it to me naturally. Afterward, we walked slowly through downtown, with Callum happily trotting beside us like he was supervising the date personally. The city felt softer at night, streetlights glowing against sidewalks still warm from the day, music drifting faintly from bars we passed, and Ronan's shoulder brushing mine every few steps like he physically couldn't stop himself from staying close. "You cold?" he asked suddenly. "A little." Without hesitation, Ronan moved closer beside me. Not dramatic about it, just naturally sliding his arm around my shoulders while we walked. My entire body short-circuited instantly, because somehow this felt even more intimate than kissing. The casualness of it, like he already thought of us as something real. "You okay there?" he murmured near my ear. "You can't keep doing relationship things unexpectedly." Ronan laughed quietly. "Relationship things? You know what you're doing." "Do I? You put your arm around me like we've been dating for months." He looked down at me then, with that soft, amused expression that was rapidly becoming my weakness. Maybe I want to. My stomach flipped hard enough that I had to look away, which immediately made him smile wider. "There you go," he said softly. "What? That nervous thing again. I hate you." "No, you don't. Unfortunately, not even a little." We ended up stopping near the Riverwalk, where lights reflected off the water in soft gold streaks. Callum collapsed dramatically at our feet, like he'd completed an exhausting mission. "Traitor," Ronan muttered to the dog. "You're supposed to help me impress him." I laughed while Callum ignored both of us completely. Then the quiet settled around us. Not awkward, just close. Ronan leaned against the railing beside me, looking out over the water before glancing back over. "I've been trying to pace myself," he admitted suddenly. That caught my attention immediately. "With what?" "You." Heat rushed through me instantly. "What does that mean?" His eyes held mine for a second too long. "It means every time I look at you, I want to kiss you." My pulse spiked immediately. And I'm trying very hard not to scare you off by moving too fast." God, there it was again, that care, that constant awareness of me and my feelings and whether I was comfortable. I stepped a little closer before I could overthink it. "You're not scaring me off," I admitted quietly. Ronan looked down at me slowly. The city lights reflected softly in his eyes, while his expression shifted into something deeper, warmer. "You sure?" he asked softly. I nodded once. And then, because apparently honesty around Ronan was becoming impossible to stop, I admitted the truth. "I think I'm more scared of how much I already like you." The second those words left my mouth, I wanted to grab them back. Not because they weren't true, because they were too true. Ronan went very still beside me. The city lights reflected softly across the river while Callum snored dramatically at our feet, completely unaware that I was currently having the emotional equivalent of a near-death experience. "You like me that much already?" Ronan asked quietly. His voice wasn't teasing. If anything, he sounded almost overwhelmed. I looked down immediately, suddenly hyper-aware of how vulnerable I'd just been. That sounded less intense in my head. "Pierce." The softness in his voice made me look back up automatically, and the expression on his face nearly destroyed me. Because he looked affected, really affected, like hearing that mattered to him more than I realized. Ronan stepped closer slowly until our shoulders touched again. "You want to know something?" he asked quietly. "What?" I've been trying not to say the same thing all night. My heart slammed against my ribs instantly. "You have?" "Yeah." He laughed once, softly under his breath, almost disbelieving. "I honestly didn't expect this to happen so fast." Neither did I. That was the scary part. I'd spent years imagining what it would feel like if Ronan ever wanted me back. I never imagined it would feel this easy, this natural, like we were skipping over steps somehow. And honestly, maybe we were, because this didn't feel like two strangers dating. It felt like reconnecting with something that had already existed underneath everything for years. Ronan looked down at me for a long moment before speaking again. "You know what's messing me up?" "What?" "The fact that every version of you feels familiar. That hit me right in the chest. The nervous version. His fingers brushed lightly against mine. The sarcastic version. Then his thumb slid softly across my knuckles. And this version. His eyes held mine steadily now. The one that lets me get close. I swear my entire body melted a little hearing that. Because somehow, Ronan made vulnerability feel less terrifying. Like he'd handle it carefully. You make it hard not to, I admitted quietly. His expression softened immediately. Then, without even thinking about it, Ronan lifted my joined hands and kissed my knuckles lightly, and I genuinely forgot where I was. Oh my God, I whispered immediately. Ronan laughed softly. Too much? You're acting like somebody from a romance novel. You hate it? I looked at him for one long second, then honestly answered, no. That smile appeared again, warm and devastating and somehow softer now than it had been at the wedding. Like something between us had settled into place tonight. Callum stood up suddenly, stretching dramatically before nudging directly between us, demanding attention. The moment broke instantly. I laughed while Ronan groaned. He's jealous. He absolutely should be. Ronan looked down at the dog. You were literally invited for emotional support. Callum ignored him completely and leaned against my legs instead. Wow, I said. Your own son betrayed you. Unbelievable. But he was smiling while he said it. And honestly, watching Ronan in these normal little moments was becoming one of my favorite things. Not just the intense stuff, the soft stuff too. The easy laughter. The way he absent-mindedly fixed my collar after the wind shifted it crooked. The way he kept checking whether I was cold. The way he looked at me every time I spoke, like he genuinely cared about every word. It was becoming impossible not to fall harder for him, which was deeply inconvenient. Eventually, we started walking back toward our cars slowly, neither of us really in a hurry. The city had gotten quieter now. Cooler, too. Ronan kept close beside me the entire walk, his hand occasionally brushing mine before finally just intertwining our fingers outright again. And honestly, at this point, it already felt natural, like my body expected his touch now. Dangerous realization. You know what I realized tonight? Ronan said quietly as we reached the parking lot. What? I'm already thinking ahead. My stomach tightened instantly. What do you mean? He glanced over at me. Future stuff. That definitely affected my breathing. Like what? Ronan shrugged slightly, suddenly looking a little nervous for the first time all night. And weirdly, that made me love him a little. Like introducing you to my friends. He laughed softly under his breath, wondering what you'd look like at my apartment all the time. Dumb stuff. Dumb stuff. Right? Meanwhile, my heart was trying to escape my body. That's not dumb, I said quietly. His eyes met mine immediately. No? I shook my head once, because honestly, I'd already caught myself doing the same thing, imagining him in my space, in my routines, in my life. And the fact that neither of us seemed scared off by that anymore felt huge somehow. Ronan stepped closer once we stopped beside my car. Close enough that Callum wandered off to sniff nearby bushes like he already knew what was coming. You know, Ronan murmured softly, I was planning to take this slow. I smiled faintly. Yeah? Yeah. His eyes moved slowly across my face. That's not going very well. My pulse jumped immediately. Whose fault is that? Probably yours. I laughed softly. How? You look at me like you already trust me. That one hit hard. Because maybe I did, more than I should have this early. But every single thing about Ronan felt careful with me, intentional, safe. I looked up at him quietly, and suddenly the space between us felt charged all over again. His hand slid lightly against my waist. Mine instinctively caught the front of his sweater. Neither of us looked away. Pierce, he said softly. The way he said my name now felt completely different than it did at the wedding. Warmer, like it belonged in his mouth. Yeah? I whispered. Ronan leaned closer slowly, and right before he kissed me, he murmured quietly against my lips, I think I'm already in trouble with you. The kiss felt different again. Somehow, every time Ronan kissed me, it changed. At the wedding, it was years of unresolved tension finally snapping. In the parking lot outside the hotel, it felt reckless and overwhelming. Now it felt intimate, like we already belonged to each other a little. His hands stayed warm against my waist while he kissed me slowly under the parking lot lights. And honestly, I melted into him immediately, because this was becoming dangerously familiar already. The way his body fit against mine, the quiet sound he made whenever I kissed him back harder, the way he always tilted his head slightly before deepening the kiss, like he was savoring it. God. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us moved far. Ronan rested his forehead lightly against mine while both of us caught our breath. "This is getting bad," he murmured softly. I laughed breathlessly. "Bad? I'm supposed to be acting normal around you. You've never acted normal around me." Fair. That smile appeared again, smaller this time, soft. And suddenly I got hit with this overwhelming realization that I like seeing him like this more than anything else. Not just hot, not just flirtatious, happy, open. Like he wasn't hiding anymore either. "You're staring again," he whispered. "I'm thinking. Dangerous." I laughed quietly while he brushed his thumb against my waist again. And honestly, I never wanted him to stop touching me. That realization should have scared me more than it did. Instead, it just made my chest ache warmly. Ronan looked down at me for a second before speaking again. "You know what I keep realizing?" "What?" "I missed out on a lot of time with you." The honesty in his voice hit hard immediately, because I felt it too. All those years we could have known each other like this. All those almost moments. It was hard not to mourn them a little. "I know," I admitted softly. Ronan's expression gentled instantly. Then he reached up and brushed a strand of hair back from my forehead so carefully it almost hurt. "But," he said quietly, "I think we found each other at the right time." That one settled deep in my chest, because maybe he was right. 16-year-old me couldn't have handled this. Back then, I would have destroyed myself trying to survive feelings this big. But now, I could actually let somebody love me without immediately running from it. And Ronan felt patient enough to let me figure that out slowly. "You make me feel weirdly safe," I admitted before I could stop myself. His entire expression softened, like fully softened. "Pierce." "No, I mean it," I laughed nervously, which is terrifying because I usually take forever to trust people. Ronan looked at me quietly for a second. Then he stepped even closer somehow, his arms wrapping around me fully this time. Not rushed, not heated, just holding me. And honestly, that almost got me worse than the kissing, because nobody had held me like they were genuinely careful with me in a very long time. I rested my forehead lightly against his shoulder while his hand moved slowly up and down my back. "You know what's funny?" he murmured near my ear. "What?" "I used to think you were way out of my league." I pulled back immediately. "Excuse me? I'm serious." "That is objectively insane." Ronan laughed softly. "You were intimidating. I was a nervous theater kid. You were pretty and smart and emotionally unavailable." I stared at him in disbelief. Emotionally unavailable? You avoided eye contact like it paid taxes. I burst out laughing while he smiled against my hair. "Okay, fair," I admitted. "Exactly." We stayed like that for another minute, just holding each other in the middle of the parking lot, while Callum wandered in circles nearby, pretending not to supervise us. And for the first time since the wedding, the panic finally quieted a little in my chest. Not disappeared completely, just softened enough to breathe. Because this didn't feel fragile anymore. It didn't feel like one perfect night we'd wake up from. It felt like the beginning of something real. Eventually, Ronan leaned back enough to look at me again, and the expression on his face nearly wrecked me one final time. Because he looked completely gone for me. No hesitation left. No uncertainty. Just warmth and affection and something deeper growing underneath it already. You know, he said softly, I had this whole plan to play it cool if I ever saw you again. I smiled faintly. Yeah? Yeah. He laughed quietly under his breath. That lasted about 30 seconds. Honestly, same. Ronan's eyes moved slowly across my face again before he asked, so what happens now? The question hung softly between us, and weirdly, I wasn't scared of the answer anymore. I looked up at him, smiling helplessly. I think you take me on another date. That grin appeared instantly. Yeah? Yeah. What if I want to take you on a lot of dates? My stomach flipped all over again. But this time, instead of panicking, I stepped closer, wrapped my arms around his neck lightly, and kissed him first. Slow, certain, intentional. When I pulled back, Ronan looked genuinely stunned for half a second, before smiling against my mouth. There he is, he murmured softly. What? The version of you that stops running. And honestly, for the first time in my life, I think he was right.